Welcome to Let's Thrive Postpartum, where we tackle postpartum depression and anxiety head on, guiding you back to yourself. Join Kelly Siebold, founder of Thrive Postpartum, and Ashley Moore, a maternal mental health therapist. Through honesty and laughter, we share expert advice and real stories. While not therapy or medical advice, you'll find education, support, and hope. Welcome to the village. Let's thrive postpartum.
Welcome back to Let's Thrive Postpartum. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Ashley.
And today we're going to go back into another fascinating mom story. So today we are joined by our guest, Kris. Kris is the mother of two, and she's also the COO of Amplified Solutions, which provides real estate software. And she's going to tell us her story about pregnancy and depression.
I think her story is really going to resonate with a lot of moms out there. She is going to go over her experience of having a traumatic pregnancy with prenatal depression, navigating some relationship challenges with her husband, how she realized that she had been masking her postpartum depression for many, many years after the birth of both of her children, and some of her thoughts on how to close the gap in access to care for pregnant and postpartum women. We really hope you enjoy.
Welcome, Kris. Thank you for joining us today and telling us your story.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Kris, tell us a little bit about your pregnancy. What was it like? What did you expect? Kind of your pregnancy journey.
So I'm going to talk about both of my pregnancies. I have two kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a almost 10-year-old son. And both of my pregnancies, I had very similar experiences. So with my son, we were newly married. We thought if we start trying now, we'll be pregnant in the spring. Nope. One of us is the most fertile person who has ever walked the earth. And so it's hard for me to talk with friends about their struggles with fertility and things like that, because that wasn't my experience. And it wasn't anything I did to do that. It just was luck. So when I was pregnant with my son, I was very sick from the start. I was throwing up and nauseous every day from 5 weeks until the day he was born. And that was exactly what happened with my daughter as well. So I was diagnosed with HELLP syndrome, HELLP. It's a rare pregnancy syndrome complication. It's where it's a form of preeclampsia. So you've got elevated liver enzymes, your platelets are low, your blood pressure is through the roof. I remember at one point, my nurse, I had to call in and I had a blood pressure cuff. My dad has high blood pressure problems, not related to pregnancy, but I would take my blood pressure and I'd have to call it in and they go, okay, thanks. And as I got later and later in my pregnancy, and I don't remember what it was. I wish I did. It would be better for the story. But I'd call in my blood pressure and she'd go, what'd you say? And I'd go, it's this. And she'd go, you need to lay down right now for 15 minutes. Do not move. And then call me back. And this is fun. Okay. So I'd go and do that. So that got more and more frequent. And it's pretty rare, like 1 to 2 out of every 1,000 pregnancies gets this. So I don't want anyone who's prepping for pregnancy to hear this and go, oh, this is going to happen to me. It's probably not. It's really rare. But the treatment for that's the word I'm looking for, is you give birth. So you got to get the baby out of there. And to get those phone calls of, okay, we have to figure out what we're going to do because it's dangerous for both you and the baby to be pregnant any longer. That was the environment that I was in. So with Sloan, I had less complications due to HELLP syndrome. I didn't get formally diagnosed with HELLP syndrome until my second pregnancy, but looking back, I probably had a big toe over the line with my first. And when you are sick all day, every day for the better part of a year, you don't feel like yourself. So I really had prenatal and postpartum depression. I would come home from work Kelly, you and I were working together at the time.
Mhm. We were.
I'd come home from work after just pushing through all day, and work was a blessing because it kept my mind off of how horrible I felt. And so I'd work and I'd come home and I would sit on the edge of the bed, and my poor husband, he would bring me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with sour cream and cheddar Lay's potato chips and a glass of water. And he'd deliver them to me like this, like, here you go. And I couldn't even look up. I'd take them and I'd maybe eat half of it. I'd put it on the nightstand. This is at like 5:30, by the way. And sometimes I would brush my teeth and change my clothes, and sometimes I wouldn't. And then I would go to bed because all I wanted was for the day to be over. So that was every single day. There was no relief. And I always laugh because people are like, oh, I'm not supposed to have lunch meat. And I'm like, if you saw the handfuls of prescription drugs I took with both of my pregnancies, I thought my kids were going to come out with horns. I was like, there's no way they're not going to come out with scales or horns or something. So that just existing was really, really challenging during both of my pregnancies. I was telling Kelly before we got started that I don't have any pictures of me. Between two pregnancies, I have 3 pictures of me pregnant. And that even in the moment, I was like, I don't want to remember any of this. And it really took me a long time because I wasn't early or late with my pregnancies. I was sort of doing it around the time when a lot of my friends and peers were. And it took me a long time afterwards when someone would be like, I'm pregnant. I'd be like, are you okay? Like, and that's not what people want to hear. But for me, there was no, of course, when you look up HELP syndrome or I'm nauseous or whatever, you can find stuff on it. But the vast majority of the reading material that you get is like, oh, you've entered week this. You should be feeling sexy. And you should be feel like that. What to expect when you're expecting book is the worst thing if you have anything outside of what someone would consider a normal pregnancy, because everything I was reading was telling me I should be feeling differently than I was. And it was really demoralizing and frustrating.
Can I ask a question? So if you're hearing from the outside world, if you're hearing what we've all been told, read the What to Expect When You're Expecting book. Your expectations are one thing and your experience is another. How did you feel about that mentally? Right? Because you aren't having the experience you likely thought you were going to have.
Yeah. And so many people were like, oh, I loved being pregnant. And I didn't have a whole lot of people sharing stories about their pregnancies. So I was just going off of what I saw in movies and what I was reading about and what people were telling me to expect. And in my view, being pregnant and having an infant is a really isolating experience. Like, even if you're having a more normal pregnancy, everyone else is carrying on around you. They're still drinking, they're still going out, they're still going on runs and doing their normal things. And you, as you get farther and farther along in your pregnancy, you become more and more limited on those things that you feel like doing or that you should do and whatever. And I felt very alone. I felt like no one could possibly understand what I was going through. And they largely didn't. Like, I was talking to my mom every day and she's like, you're sick again? And I was like, yes, damn it. I'm sick all day, every day. Like, what don't you understand? It's from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed, all I think about is throwing up and keeping myself from throwing up. And how can I get through the next 5 minutes of this? So, I mean, it's been 10 years and it's still very it was a traumatic experience. So and twice. So it's very, very isolating and it was very frustrating. And I sort of even further isolated because I hated having to say yeah, I'm still sick. Yeah, I still don't feel good. And I remember my sister calling towards the end of my pregnancy and she was crying. And I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And she goes, I'm sick. And I was like, well, what's wrong? And she goes, I've been throwing up for 2 days. And I was like, I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, tell me about it. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And she goes, if this is how you feel, it's just awful. Because you kind of forget what it feels like to be nauseous. And then when you get sick again, you're like, ooh, I remember this. This is terrible. And so she hadn't experienced that in a long time. And those 2 days of misery. And so I didn't belabor it. I was sympathetic to her temporary sickness, but no one understands. And I didn't feel like anyone understood. So I sort of isolated a little bit more during my pregnancies just because I wasn't up for anything. And our marriage was suffering. Like Mike was having a great time because I was either at work or I was asleep. Like we weren't doing nothing. And so he just would go downstairs and play video games. And he was like, it was great. She'd sleep all night because I didn't need anything. I just wanted to shut down and just get through it as fast as possible. And so hindsight, I was never formally diagnosed with prenatal depression, but knowing what I know now, like none of that is normal. And I totally had it. And it was not fun. So that's like the nutshell version of my pregnancy stories. And with my daughter, so she's our second. So I was pregnant with her second. Not to get too crass or anything, but we had always planned on having 2 children. It was never a question. It was never like, well, we'll see how it goes. It was like, I was certain that I wanted to. My husband was certain that I wanted to. And when our son was, I don't know, they're less than 3 years apart, 2.5 to 3 years apart. So about that time when our son, minus the 9 months, we were alone together at lunch and Mike was like, hey, you wanna? And I was like, fine. So we did our thing and it ended differently than I expected. And I shoved him off of me and I went, you asshole, now I'm probably pregnant again. And I was. I took a pregnancy test like a week and a half later and that faint blue line came and I was furious. And I was furious because, I mean, you know what I mean? We had always planned on having 2. But with everything that happened with my first pregnancy, I had envisioned that I would be like, I'm going to prepare. I'm going to be like, we're going to try. And I was going to be emotionally and mentally prepared to do this again because I was willing to. I don't know why. And I'm thankful that I did because, wow, she's amazing. But I really thought that I would have more time to mentally prepare and emotionally prepare for it. And we had a talk one night. I was crying on the couch. I was very pregnant. I was still very sick, even more sick than my first pregnancy because I was formally diagnosed with the HELP syndrome. And I sat my husband down and I was like, I am so resentful towards you. And I'm going to cry again. And that's okay. Because I feel like that choice was made for me. My real estate career was taking off. I was on track to be top producer of the year, which was a very big deal in my company. And everything fell off. My production in real estate fell off because I couldn't make it to the office to do the things I needed to do. The timing was really important. Yeah. Early morning prospecting and stuff is very important. If you're listening in real estate, make your damn calls. So you have to prospect early in the morning and I couldn't make it there because I was so sick. And so my work progress was derailed. And that ended up being a very good thing because when I went on maternity leave, my then employer was like, when you come back, I'd like you to be broker in charge. So the universe has your back. Everything happens for a reason. It all worked out. But there was that resentment piece. And looking at it through the lens that I have now, things got really relationship-wise. I think this is another topic that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to your pregnancies, and you're so focused on the baby and the relationship that you have. While he was doing everything right, he was painting my toenails, he was helping me. Like, no one works harder for me than this man, and he loves me very much. But I was so resentful towards him because of that. I felt like I didn't have that choice. And I do. Like, I lived in a state where I could have had an abortion or whatever, but the timing of it was very hard. So we had some very difficult conversations about my resentments toward him. And I feel like that didn't really go away until after the baby was born. And I was afraid that I was resenting the baby, like in combination of him, because my professional dreams, I like to work. And that was very important to me. I have snot. I hope you guys are watching the snot coming out of my nose. So that piece, we had never fully recovered from my first pregnancy and the toll that that took on our relationship. And the having of an infant also takes a toll on your relationship, even when things are going well, even when you don't have postpartum depression. And if you're paying attention, I had a almost 2-year-old and was doing nothing at this time for my postpartum or prenatal depression. I didn't treat I know the questions you guys are going to ask, so I'm just going to go ahead for you.
Go for it.
So I didn't get treated for my postpartum depression until my daughter was 3 or 4. So this was a very, very long time. Yes.
So you had your son first, and then if she was 3 or 4, that's a 5 to 6 year period, correct? Where you just had prenatal depression that then rolled into postnatal depression. And that's a long time to feel really terrible.
It is a long time. And in those periods, so I was very, very sick with my son. And then after he was born, I felt so much better. It was like, I'm going to wipe the tears off my neck. With both of them, it was like walking through a door. Like everything I was experiencing with my pregnancies, it stopped as the second they were born. I mean, I felt elated. I felt giddy. When Sloan was born, I cried for like an hour and a half. I would like hysterical, sobbing, crying. And Mike was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "It's over. It's over. Like, I'm free." I felt like I'd been released from jail or something. Like, it was remarkable.
Did you almost instantly feel better? Like after giving birth, was it a fairly immediate like relief of some of those symptoms?
It was immediate. Zero of the things that I experienced during pregnancy happened after they exited my body. It was remarkable. And so then I was really low during the pregnancy, and then I was up because I was like, I'm starting to feel like me again. So my postpartum depression was not as low as my prenatal depression because I wasn't as sick and I did feel better. So it came up, but it didn't come back up to that normal level. And that, I think, is why it took me so long to address it. In addition to that, I like to say, Mr. McDonough and I got our troubles out of the way early. Our marriage it wasn't on the rocks, but I think it's fair to say we were in a high conflict mode, like in our early marital years. And because I got pregnant so early in our marriage, we didn't have time to sort those things out and get to like a really great foundation of marriage before we threw in having kids. And so I had this low level of postpartum depression that was higher. It was better than my prenatal level of depression, but we have always been, even when we're at our worst, we are amazing parents. We're a great team. We co-parent fantastically together. But the challenges that we had to work out, I just kept looking to those as like, because those were so overt, I was like, if I could just get that piece put together, I'll feel better. And so that was really masking my postpartum depression. So we got help where things are getting better and things are going very well in our relationship. And I was like, oh, I still don't feel good. Like, you're doing all the things. Thank you so much. But I'm still not feeling normal. So I went back to my doctor and she was like, "Where have you been?" Because this was after my second pregnancy and I had gone to the normal checkups, but I was very, very late on the last one. And I showed up and she was like, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "I think I have postpartum depression." And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And she goes, "Well, okay, well, let's look at this little checklist." And it was the most ridiculous checklist, but I was like, "Yeah, I've got this." So she referred me I live in the Charleston, South Carolina area. I went downtown. It's a walk-in clinic with MUSC. And you walk in to this little room, they check you in, and you go in the back, and it looked like a computer lab from middle school. If you're in your late 30s, early 40s, you might remember those. And I took a quiz on a computer, and ta-da, you have postpartum depression. So it was really easy once I was like, hey, I think I have postpartum depression. Now, I'm going to back up a step because my doctor is amazing. I love her. I think she's wonderful. So I'm not trying to say anything bad about her. The system, the medical system that I am plugged into, I don't know what everyone else's experience is, but the one I use, it's a major medical system. And my doctors, they don't have that, they're rushing around. Like, I even went to my normal annual exam recently, and she was like, and she was late. She did all her things. She was very kind, and bedside manner is great when she's in there. And then I was like, well, could you ask me if I have anything else to talk about? I had to like pull her back in out of the hallway in front of people and like, hey, can I ask you a question before I leave? Like, and it's just because they're so overloaded. And I feel like there's a strain on our medical system, and they're just trying to see as many people as they can. And so with that, they're not picking up on those. If they were spending more time with the mothers, I feel like they would be able to pick up and having a conversation instead of just checking off their box. They could pick up on these things because, and I'll say it again, looking at it, the whole situation through this lens, it wasn't normal that I was thinking, oh, I should put on makeup so they don't think I have postpartum depression. Like when I go to my doctor's appointments, like it was kind of a funny like, haha, I should do this type of thing. But that was a signal. That was a sign. Like, I've never thought before in my life that I need to dress a certain way so people think I'm okay. And that was definitely a red flag for me that I didn't pick up on. And there's not a whole lot of screening for postpartum depression. There's a checklist that looks like it was printed off in 1987. A pamphlet that they give you, and you look at it and you're like, of course I don't have that. Why would you think that about? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, and it's something I hear a lot from women. I mean, in my experience, Kelly, we've talked about this before. For me, is like, I realized it's just not information that I was able to just volunteer, right? Like, I needed somebody to really sincerely say, how are you doing? Are you okay? And have the kind of relationship where I felt comfortable opening up to say, I'm not okay. And the really quick in and out visits it's not conducive to the environment of women feeling super comfortable sharing. It could be in different situations, right? Like maybe in areas where there's a more personal relationship with your doctor or something like that. It's possible that that environment is different. Wasn't my environment. It was very much the same, in and out, part of a big medical system. And I was like, we're good. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to bother you, but I'm dying over here.
So I think there's a lot, part of what we want to accomplish, and Kris, with you coming on and sharing your story, is how do we help equip moms to talk about saying there's a need? How do I proactively advocate for myself? How do I go in and say, just like you did, not feeling great, here, I need some help, like how to do that. And the fact that you were able to say, I don't feel good about this, point me in the right direction, was great, even though you had to go all that time to finally say, somebody help me.
And not only like with your doctors, but also with your husband, or for anybody out there with your partner, like that line of communication is also so incredibly important. So I'd love to hear too, like in terms of advocating for yourself, like with your doctors, but also how did you talk with your spouse about how you were feeling emotionally? Like what that kind of journey looked like?
The social conditioning that comes with your relationships and with having a family and your newborn, this is supposed to be this wonderful, delightful time in your life. And just like my pregnancy had been, we were really enjoying having the baby, but the baby was the only joy. Like our relationship was struggling. Our individual needs were not being met. And I think if there's more dialogue about what actually happens in all situations, not just with prenatal and postpartum depression, but if there's more dialogue about like, hey, marriage is hard. Like, I mean, if Kelly and I lived together for 50 years, we'd fight like cats and dogs too. Like this idea of marital bliss, like when does that happen? Like it's always work because we're humans and we're complicated and everyone is on different train tracks. Like when you talk about girls maturing faster than boys, like that doesn't stop when you turn 18. My husband and I are almost exactly the same age. And to grow with someone and stay on the same trajectory and have the same vision and goals for a really, really long time, I mean, that's remarkable. And it takes a insurmountable amount of work. And luckily, my husband loves to work. And not just at work, he likes to work around the house. He's willing to work on our marriage. And I like to work too. And if we didn't both love to work, we would have gotten divorced a really long time ago. Even on our darkest days, he's still my person. And if he knew, he'll say, like, I don't know how to talk about these things. I never had to talk about these things until I was with you. And so he didn't know what to look for. He didn't know how to bring it up in a way that wasn't from me. And I think getting the people closest to us, whether it is the men or the partner or whatever, to really help support the person who's experiencing the pregnancy and taking most of the care of the newborn, I think that would really help. Oh, I meant to say this earlier. And the other piece that I think would help women with their postpartum diagnosis or getting help faster are the pediatricians. You're seeing your pediatrician so much more frequently than you are your OBGYN. And I mean, I'm a rule follower. So if you say you're going to produce more breast milk if you wear purple and you walk backwards for 10 minutes a day, I'm going to do that. And I went to a very popular baby-friendly hospital to have my baby. And I was with my mom would come to a lot of my appointments. She's retired and she was very involved, which was wonderful. But she was at an infant appointment with me and I was a wreck. And I was just miserable. And he ended up talking to me for a long time about my approach to breastfeeding. And that was very helpful. And he was like, I see a lot of mothers coming from these baby-friendly clinics, and they are in the same shape that you are in because they're very vigilant. Like you have to get up every 3 hours. And if the baby's not feeding, you have to pump and you have to do this and you must do this. And my mom was like, yeah, I breastfed both of my babies and I don't remember I just fed them when they were hungry and it was fine. So she was trying to help, like, hey, you probably don't need to be doing all this stuff, but also not wanting to tell me what to do because I'm very independent and don't like to be told what to do. And she appreciates that about me or hates that. I don't know. But that was his opportunity. And what he said was super helpful. And I did change my approach after that. And it helped me to take some of the pressure off of myself to do this because I felt like if I wasn't, I was going to kill my baby. Like I'm not going to produce enough. And I don't know, not really kill them, but they would be malnourished or whatever.
Feeding is a whole other issue for so many moms. Kelly and I have talked about that a lot. Just it alone can send people into that spiral of anxiety. And because your whole life revolves around feeding, it seems feeding this tiny human. Kris, I liked what you were saying earlier about like the conversation between you and your husband and talking about some of, the generalizations of men are in general they're uncomfortable with a lot of feelings. They're also very uncomfortable with the idea of pregnancy. It's not something they're ever going to experience or go through. And I hear a lot of them say, like, I feel like I can't speak to anything about it because it's not something I've experienced. And something I try and encourage couples to do, though, is say, like, as the husband, like, you don't have to understand pregnancy and giving birth to notice that maybe something is very different with your partner or your spouse. And it's okay to say, this just doesn't seem like you, or like, this doesn't. And I think a lot of people are like, they're like, well, maybe this is in the range of normal. And I don't know what the range of normal is, but maybe this is in the range of normal. So I'm not going to say anything because maybe this is just how everybody is. And there's a lot of like lack of information, I think, on a partner's, on their side. And so sometimes I'm like, if you notice that something's different about your partner, it doesn't matter if it's because it rained today or because they just had a baby. Like, it's okay to say something doesn't seem right. Like something, you're not yourself. You don't seem happy, or you never used to worry about these things anymore, or you used to love doing this. And now I notice like you don't want to do any of the things that you used to love. It's okay to say that to them. I've been a pregnant postpartum woman myself. It's not always received really well, but it is somebody that's highlighting and kind of giving that signal of, oh, okay, maybe there's something a little bit more going on that we need to like look into and get extra help for.
I agree. And even planting that seed, like I was so miserable if I feel I was laughing because you're like, maybe it wouldn't be received well. Like, I know I would have been like, what do you know? You know what I mean? Like, how dare, and I probably wouldn't have said it out loud, but I would have thought it like, how dare you? Like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? Because this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And it's ongoing for a year. And I had to do it twice. Like, the experience that you have, it divides. Like, even in your most, this is amazing pregnancy, you're going through something in a big way, and you're growing and you're changing. And that leap, it tends to, because they don't understand, and they can't understand because that's not something that they would ever experience. But I think having that conversation and even planting that seed would be important. And thinking, again, the postmortem of my pregnancies, like and I talked about the masking of it earlier, like with our relationship issues, that was sort of like the thing I could point to. That thing, if we could fix that, I will be happy. But when I was pregnant, like, I don't know that he could have been like, hey, this isn't normal, because like, of course I was throwing up every single day for a year. So I think getting more support and more written available things to read or watch about ways you can help yourself, even if it's like, hey, you need to make sleep a priority. Hey, you need to eat, whatever the thing is that you need to do to help either during your pregnancy or immediately after, or for years after, to get yourself back on that even keel is important.
That's a perfect segue into, I'd love to ask you one last question. Like, going through all of this, I have a 7 and a 10-year-old, and you've mentioned it took a long time to get help. You finally were able to get support, and looking through, there's so many gaps in ways that we could have better helped you as a society not be in this situation. As you're looking back kind of in that postmortem of what happened during my pregnancy, what is one or two things that you wish, looking back, you would have known, that you wish another mom who's listening could hear and know?
Yes.
Is there anything that would have helped you?
Yeah.
Yes. I would have loved to have known how accessible the help was that I got, because as soon as I raised my hand and said, I think I have postpartum depression, I got help within the week. I went downtown. I walked through that little door at MUSC. I met with a psychiatrist that day, and she asked me, okay, this has been going on for a while. How do you want to approach this? Do you want to take medicine? Do you want to have talk therapy? She gave me some options. And I said, I have been experiencing this for so long. I want you to throw the book at me. I said, I don't care if you have to commit me somewhere. Like, now that I'm like, I was ready to admit that I was not okay. And it wasn't just our marital issues or me being sick or whatever. Like, I had something going on that I needed to fix. And I had been not feeling well emotionally, mentally for so long that I was like, I want everything. I want to come in here and talk to you as frequently as you'll allow it. I want to be on medicine, whatever. And so I went to see her once a week. She put me on medicine. It's probably the generic of Zoloft or something. And so she put me on medicine. I went to see her every day for every day, not every day. Holy man. I went to see her every week for about 6 months. And then I went once a month after that for 8, 9 months, the better part of a year. And towards the end, she was like, I'm breaking up with you. Like, you don't need to come here anymore. And I was like, can I still take this medicine though? Because I feel awesome. And she was like, there's no long-term side effects. You can go ahead and do that. But so the ways I could have been supported better are my doctor and my pediatrician taking more time with me to speak to me. And I don't know that my friends could have supported me, you know what I mean, without asking me outright, like, how are you feeling after your pregnancy? Because it was such a joy to be with them. Like, I was happy when I was with them. It was such a low level thing. But I think understanding and having more visibility of the symptoms of what you guys are doing, like just a little, I want it to be trickling through in my social media feed. Like, hey, if you're experiencing this, it might be this, just to plant that seed, because all my psychology classes in college taught me if someone doesn't want help, that you can't help them. So they have to come to that realization on their own that, hey, I need some help. Something's not right with me. And a lot of us, when someone tells you like, there's something wrong with you, you immediately like, whoa, that's not the reality. It's farthest thing from the truth. So I think being able to come to that realization on my own was what got me there. And I think that reducing the shame around talking about how your pregnancy was not this wonderful experience and how having a newborn may not be this amazing, wonderful unicorns and rainbows experience. I think taking away the shame of that, because I didn't want anyone to think that I wasn't happy. Like, I love my children more than I could ever express. But because that strife, whatever word I'm looking for, is associated with them, you kind of feel like they're, you know what I mean? Not that they're to blame, but they're the cause of it, because it was the pregnancy that was the cause of it. So
I always love asking people the question of like, can you be okay and tell yourself that it's okay for two things to be true, right? You can love your children and love your spouse more than anything in the world. And at the same time, have days where it's like, oh,
yeah.
That took me a long time to learn, that I can be absolutely in love and so happy to be a mom, and also absolutely in the worst part of my life. I mean, you could do both. And learning that both can be true at the same time was a hard lesson for me to learn. And to be like, okay, both are true, even though the feeling doesn't match the other truth of the happiness.
Right. And one doesn't negate the other. They can kind of coexist. I mean,
Kris, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and letting moms hear that one, pregnancy might not always be, as you said, like the unicorns and rainbows that we all were told that this is what life should be like, and realizing kind of afterwards that there are ups and downs. And even with marriage situations getting better, that there's still help needed. And it makes my heart so happy that when you said, I do need help, that there was help available to you. Like that was something you were able to get versus considering just staying there struggling, knowing that you needed something.
Yeah. And it's a season. Like I was saying earlier, like even if I lived with one of you and didn't have a romantic relationship, we would have seasons where we would have high conflict and seasons where things went really well. And regardless of your politics, I saw an interview once with Michelle Obama, and she was talking about her marriage. And she was like, the first 10 years after we had kids was the worst time of our marriage. And a lot of people give up and they get divorced. And to hear her echo, sorry, Mike, echo our experience, like, yes, I will take 10 bad years for 30 good ones. I will take that bet all day long. And you have to, we're going to be alive if we take care of ourselves and we don't have an accident. Like, we're going to be alive a really long time. So taking your hot air balloon up and looking at it as like, okay, this experience does not define me. Like, yes, I'm here talking about this today. And yes, talking about it brings me to tears, but it was part of my experience. This is character building shit. Like, I've gone through something and I've overcome something, and I'm so much better for it because I can sympathize and empathize with other people in a way that someone who doesn't go through a, for lack of a better word, traumatic experience twice, I have a better understanding and I can connect with other people. So it's not something that you live with forever. And help is available, whether it's online at a distance, or like you can talk to a therapist in your cell phone now. Like, it's so much more accessible than it was before. But even if you feel like you have a toe over the line, like I said, it was the worst when I was pregnant. And then it was just sort of this low level, sneaky depression for such a long time that you get busy, you're working, you're pretending. And it's easy to pretend your way for a long, long time, like I did, but it's not forever. And there's a lot of beauty on the other side. And when you go through a mental health challenge and you really do the work to make sure that you're insulating yourself from experiencing something like that again, it really helps your children, because it allows me, like, my son talks about emotions in a way, it makes my heart soar, like, to hear him discuss how he's feeling. Like, I really make sure to ask him, how do you feel? Not what did you do? How are you feeling? And he's able to articulate that to me. He's able to tell me when he isn't happy. And I'm hoping that it's helping me to parent in a way that I wouldn't have parented without these challenges. So It's not all doom and gloom. I know my story wasn't like, wee, that was fun to listen to, but it's reality. And I think that we need to talk about reality a little bit more often. And it's really beautiful and wonderful on the other side. And because I went through that, I'm parenting at a deeper level than I think I would have without it. And Mike and I have experienced something like, we've grown through this. It did not make us stronger at one point in time. It was very divisive to our relationship, but we overcame it. We got through it. And that's really beautiful too. And I just keep going. You don't have to give up. It's obviously, there are situations when you should talk to your therapist or provider about those situations, but like, just keep going, because that infancy stage, the pregnancy stage, that's not the entirety of your relationship. And I think about people in my life who ended things when their children were really young, and you know what I mean? And then I look at the troubles that we had, and I'm like, man, I'm just so glad we pushed through, because it's really great. It's really great now.
It is. And I think that's
really
kind
wonderful.
of the perfect way to wrap up, that your reminder that it does get better. There is something on the other side. And I love how you brought this story up of you hearing someone say the first 10 years were the worst 10 years, and that resonating with you, and something that you kind of can hold on to, because I guarantee there's a mom listening who's going to be thinking the same thing of your story, that this is something that I can make it through this pregnancy. I can do this. I've heard someone else who made it to the other side and is in a great relationship, feels good. So thank you for bringing that up, because I also want to say thank you. I guarantee you your story is going to resonate in the same way. So thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing with us. And also the reminders that you will get through this. Ask for help, that it is better. And I completely agree. Postpartum depression, prenatal depression is extremely hard on a relationship. And just the reminders that when you make it through, you've made it through something that most couples don't, that not giving up, because it does make you stronger, right? Once you actually make through some of those lower points. So Kris, thank you from behalf of us, but also from all the moms listening, because I know they heard a lot of themselves in your story.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate being able to talk about it, because it helps me in a selfish way. It really helps me to talk about it.
And I think the more we talk about it,
to a degree,
the less shame there is in general for everybody. The more it's an open conversation and shared, the more it helps all of us.
Exactly.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Kris, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Again, we kind of want to keep sharing mom stories because we want you to know that so much of this is normal. 20% of moms get this. So, right, one of every 5 moms, if you think of your friends who've had kids or your family members, 1 of 5 of them had this situation. It's very normal. And the more we can talk about it and the more you can get ideas, the more we want to equip you to feel better and you help yourself. And we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you. We'll see you next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please be sure to hit subscribe, leave us your feedback, and give us a 5-star review. For even more support, visit us at wethrivepostpartum.com/podcast to sign up for our newsletter and learn more about our community. Remember, you are not alone. With support, you can feel better. Together, let's thrive postpartum.